Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new show. You see him right there. We promised that we were going to bring Alex Hurst from the Truth Faith podcast, and here he is, taking the time of the day, 8 p.m. in the UK. So, thank you so much, Alex, for taking this time. And I know you're a busy man, but I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Nice to be asked, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody that's in the media, listening to podcasts, etc., knows what who Alex Hurst is, and the True Faith podcast, of course, with Charlotte and the team. But we got about an hour to talk, and so let's get right down to it, man. Tell us about the True Faith podcast. Yeah, I got you that you guys started in 1999, but I mean that might be, I don't know if you were a part of that, or how did that work, and what are you guys doing now? How did it transform into what it is now? Tell us a little bit about that, man.
Yeah, it was a fanzine initially. Michael Martin, who's still involved in True Faith heavily, he started that bit of an alternative view because there's some excellent Newcastle fanzines knocking around over the years, and I think he felt he could add something a little bit different to that already excellent collection. And then he started a website, and there was a different True Faith podcast before us, which was very successful, with Taylor Payne, who does The Athletic now, and Stephen Best, who does Gallagher Shots. We started in 2014 as the True Faith Weekly podcast, so we're coming up to our 10-year anniversary. Funny story, in the very first show that we did, while Alan Pardew was under a lot of pressure, we kind of laughed amongst ourselves that they'd turn to someone ridiculous like Steve Bruce if they sacked him. And then 5 years later, Bruce was manager. So we didn't see that one coming. And yeah, since then, if we've been going podcasting 10 years, we're lucky we have a decent sized audience now.
Yeah.
And we have a Patreon platform. We've got over 1,000 people subscribe to that for daily NUFC podcasts. And we have a YouTube channel as well, which we probably haven't paid as much attention to as we'd like, because the podcasts kind of take priority, but we're trying to kind of grow in that space as well. And that's going okay as well. So
yeah,
just part of the collective NUFC fan media community. Very passionate about fan media. Think it's very important. So happy to be part of it. And we're growing, and we've got about 25 people in total contribute and are on the shows or help in some way, and a full-time member of staff now to help run the business. So yeah, it's never dull.
Yeah, but you also have your YouTube channel, which might be a little bit, you put content there as well, right?
Yeah, we do, and that's going well. We're happy with that.
I'm not talking about the True Faith YouTube channel, but I'm talking about you personally. I think,
yeah. So I started my own one. Life has got in the way, unfortunately, so I haven't uploaded to that since October or something like that.
Yeah.
It was going. I expected to get kind of 10 views, a couple of hundred views, and unfortunately it was going all right. But it's something I might bring back, but just I've got 2 young kids as well, and there's something's got to give.
Of course.
The latest baby came along, and unfortunately that was it.
Yeah, man. Congratulations on that, by the way. We actually had a little newborn around the same time, which is crazy.
Yeah.
We've been trying to get you on for a long time, and of course things happen, and babies are more important than podcasting. So congratulations on that to you and the missus, man. It's a blessing for sure. But you said you've been podcasting for 10 years. People don't think about the length and the time, the hard work that you have to put into these things for it to work. Some people expect it to just happen overnight. But 10 years, man, that's quite a bit. Did you ever have feelings of maybe this is not it, or maybe this is just a hobby, or when did it become something much bigger than just a hobby?
It's a good question. I think when Rafa Benitez came to the club, we've been going you came March 16, so we've been going a couple of years, just short of a couple of years, and that kind of transformed the mood around the club from lots of people disengaging, and we were doing okay. We got more listeners than we thought we'd get, and people seemed to enjoy it, but it wasn't more than a couple of thousand per episode. And then Rafa Benitez came to the club, and then the demand for content and the like re-engaging of such a large proportion of the fan base with the club, because someone like Rafa Benitez would come and manage a club like Newcastle United, that really took us to the next level. I think it was just after we got promoted, 17-8 season, so it's March 18, we started a Patreon because we wanted to do more than the kind of once or twice a week free shows that we still put out now. And then it's just grown and grown since then. And then, you know, like pretty much every fan channel who was around before the takeover, you know, early October is just when everything changed for the football club, the region, the fan base, and that just again is taken it up to the next level. And we've had plenty of highs since then, haven't we, as a fan base, as a football club? So we've been fortunate, I suppose, as content creators, that the football club's transformed into something that, you know, now has people queuing from midnight to buy the new shirt compared to before that with 10,000 free season tickets and people walking away. So our trajectory has very much followed the clubs, but I think that's probably typical for a lot of fan content creators.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got a channel now, man. So, you know, it's a difficult thing to get into. But like you said, Newcastle fans they're wanting. They just want to talk about the tune, man. You know, it's, you know, they want to listen to it, and of course, you guys are doing a great job at that. Mighty Win, you've been a fan of them for a long time, and you always speak of.
I'm saying that I didn't realize I was on mute there. I was completely new to YouTube until the takeover, and when the takeover happened, I just wanted to get as much as I could, and then suddenly I found all of these podcasts and YouTube channels, and it was like opening a Pandora's box for me. I just couldn't get enough of it. Virtually stopped watching. And I was a telly geek. I used to love me telly, but I virtually stopped watching telly and just hunting around for new YouTube channels. And then it went to not just Newcastle ones, but you then discover other ones. This is why the likes are so important, because, you know, they then get, if YouTube say that you're looking for football, they send you to all the and the channels that they send you to are dependent upon the number of likes and that you get. So yeah, I just absolutely loved it. And then I found a couple of channels where they were having the fans forum where you could actually get on and say something. And for a lot of years, I'd done articles for the mag, just sporadically, you know, when something fired, you know, pushed me buttons. But like I say, when I discovered YouTube, it was like a new lease of life, you might say.
Yeah, but you always speak of Alex and Charlotte's chemistry that makes the podcast so great.
That's it. It's just fantastic. I love it. I never cease to watch an episode without literally laughing out loud, and how they combine the, you know, you're getting all the info and all the griff, but you're still just laughing your tits off because it's, you know, the chemistry. So how did you meet Charlotte? Did you go back a long way, or was it
went to school together. Went to sixth form together.
Right.
And then she so we lost contact after that. But then she messaged me the night of, there was the 125th anniversary. I don't know if you remember it, Newcastle, and they were losing 3-2 at home to Leicester. And I actually was in Singapore at the time, going to Australia to watch England play cricket very badly in the Ashes. And she messaged me basically saying, "What the fuck was that? Can you explain why Rafa won't play Mitrovic?" And I was like, "Well, I've got a list as long as you're on." And we just got chatting from there. And that's how we reconnected, and she became part of the show.
Oh, very good.
So she's great as well, you know. All right. Well, I mean, what do you think about this season, man? You know, Newcastle's been a lot of ups and downs this season, injuries, and in my personal opinion, certain bad decisions that we've made, you know, as well, along with the injuries, which is a big deal. FFP, right now we're dealing with it. You know, is every day there's something new. But how do you rate this season? What do you think? Did it meet your expectations? You know, Champions League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and all that stuff. What do you think?
Probably not. It didn't meet my expectations, but it was okay. It was okay, you know, because of the things you just touched on there, Chris. You know, I would have expected Newcastle to get out of the Champions League group, whether that be Europa League or next round. But then you look at the group they got, you have to you had to modify your expectations somewhat because of that. And then you look at the league position. I think we should have finished at least 5th this year, and every team could do this. Look at the league table and look at where you should have picked up points and you didn't. But I think of the defeats in particular at Chelsea and Man United. Well, if we'd won both of those 2 games, and even though Chelsea finished above one, Man U finished in the same points, they're 2 poor sides in my view. If we'd won those games, we would have finished 5th. But like you said, the injuries, the Sandro Tonali stuff, which is probably bigger than any single injury. The goalkeeper, massive, getting injured. I think they've done all right this season. Not good, not bad. They've done all right, and it gives we're close enough to the pack above for next season to give it a real good go and get back in that top 4 contention, because ultimately that's where the club need to be, in contention for the Champions League every season. So not the best season, but not the worst either. Could have been. I just think it could have been much worse, and I think there's times kind of lesser managers would have, Eddie Howe never once came into a press conference and moaned about injuries or moaned about anything really. And I think that's to his credit, because a lot of managers and a lot of previous Newcastle managers would have just thrown the towel in and thought, well, this season's screwed. What am I supposed to do? So they did all right, I think, Chris, to answer your question.
Yeah.
That was particularly noticeable, I think, after everybody said when we got beat off Man City in the FA Cup, well, that's it. That's our season finished now. And, very next press conference, no, our season hasn't finished. It has not finished. We have still got a lot of points to play for. And I really thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. When do you expect this whole FFP? First of all, what do you think about it, man? PSR, it's just a bunch of bollocks, man. I never understood that. If you're rich, if you want to spend on whatever the hell you want to spend, you should have the right to do that. But it's certainly there. So you got to do something to fix it. I don't know if they're going to. We're certainly rooting for Man City to kind of rattle the cage, so to speak. But when can we expect big signings, the signings that all Toon fans want to have? Big names, or do you even think that we need any of those? Do you think that we have the right squad to compete to win the Premier League?
Don't have a squad to compete to win the Premier League, not by but not by a long shot. I think what you'll see this summer is 2 or 3 first team signings, right wing being a key position, because if you look at the quality on the left of Gordon and Barnes, it dwarfs that of Murphy and Almiron, who have done good things for Newcastle, but shouldn't. I'd be very disappointed if either of them was first choice come August. So right wing, another one, a right centre back, because Fabian Schär, brilliant last season, one of the players of the season, but he's another year older. I think he's 33 now. So they're 2 positions I feel like we should see big money signings for both of those positions. And I think if they sell Callum Wilson, which they will if they can, you'll see another backup striker to Alexander Isak. And strikers aren't cheap, but it might not be, mega
Mm.
money, but I'd be, expecting to see 2 40 million plus signings in the right centre back and right forward position, right wing position. That's key. Overall the squad, the first 11 is very good when everyone's fit, and there is some genuine competition for places there. If you look at midfield, and some people think Newcastle need a midfielder, but most people's first choice midfield doesn't include Joe Willock, who had a very tough season but was automatic starter before that. Sean Longstaff, who's played a lot of games for Newcastle, he doesn't get into a lot of midfields. And you've got Elliot Anderson and Lewis Miley. So that position, when players are actually fit, is pretty stacked. Left wing, like I said, we've got Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon, 2 excellent players. And then up front, Alexander Isak kind of picks himself. So the team doesn't need major surgery to take the next step to kind of re-challenge for the top 4. But if you're talking about competing for Premier League titles, you're not going to get away competing for the Premier League with your like Dan Burn, Sean Longstaff, Jacob Murphy. They're just not as well as they've done for Newcastle. They're just not of the quality. I often look at the top teams when we play them and think how many of our lads would get in their team, and there ain't loads. When we play Man City and we'll play Liverpool, they're not looking at our team thinking, "Oh, we'll take 5 or 6 of their lads." They're looking at 2 of them, Bruno Guimaraes. Maybe Anthony Gordon as well, to be fair. Guimaraes, Isak and Gordon. Beyond that, there aren't any players that the top sides would want from our squad. Therefore, it's not unreasonable to say we're quite far away from competing with them for the Premier League title.
Yeah.
So when you're saying a backup striker, we need a backup striker for Isak. You see, I'm of the camp. I think we need another striker, a first team striker who goes straight in, and I can start. Sorry,
ahead of Isak, is that? Sorry,
not necessarily ahead of him, but I don't see any reason why we can't play two. And the thing is, Eddie is wedded to the 4-3-3 system, which makes it much more difficult then to get in an elite striker, as far as I'm concerned, because no elite striker is going to come knowing that they're going to be a bench warmer.
Yeah.
So it's can we change the system, or is Eddie the one-trick pony that a lot of people say that he is? High press 4-3-3, and that's
interesting. That's interesting, though, Alex. I want to get your take on what do you think on Eddie Howe in particular. Is the jury still out on if he can be the manager to take Newcastle to the elite levels, or do you think that he's proven himself enough to be trusted that way, or maybe just one more season or two more seasons? How do you rate Eddie, in all honesty? Because obviously, other than Newcastle, he's a Bournemouth. We know what he did there, but not much of experience. But what do you think about him?
Well, he's done an unbelievable job overall since he took the club from 20th to 4th into a cup final. I think there were a lot of questions that he had to answer this season, kind of for the first time as a coach, like playing in the Champions League, and he didn't manage to answer all of them probably as well as he'd liked. You look at some of I feel like this season, it's not just a question of injuries or bad luck. I think Newcastle had some key moments across the season that could have transformed their season with better decision-making or better management or better decisions, and he didn't take them. You look at Chelsea in the League Cup, that would have played Middlesbrough, then a Liverpool reserve side in the final, and it's not just the 93rd minute equaliser that we gave away. It's the fact that we gave up after being 1-0 up. We gave up in the second half as an attacking side, and he couldn't make any subs. But as a fan, you were left thinking, well, we should have tried to at least put a little bit of pressure on Chelsea rather than just accept setbacks. It was the same at PSG, and PSG are a much better side than Chelsea. But that Milan home game was a really bad one. We're 1-0 up at half time. That would have been enough, I think, for Europa League football playoff anyway. And the season looks loads different with the Europa League run or another domestic semi-final or final at least. And I think I'm a huge fan of his, but I think some of his decision-making at key times in those games and in other key fixtures have probably let him down. And he was actually pretty close to losing the crowd when we're 3-1 down at home to West Ham. He'd made some disastrous substitutions in that game. And he got it right. He recognised that he took off Emil Kraft. But he took off Emil Kraft, which is a big call to sub a player you brought on and think, I got it wrong. But that was the first time in the ground, and I don't know if anyone watching or you guys, felt this at the time, but there was people around me who are massive Eddie Howe fans saying, we can't go on like this, And then we win 4-3, and it's one of the great games, and we end up, we were looking at like a 10th place finish before then. We finished 7th. And the other one, I was at Old Trafford for the Man United defeat, and I just felt he got it so wrong, picking Martin Dubravka. And the one, I'm interested in your thoughts, guys. The one criticism I have of him, he's just too loyal. And he did a Gary Neville overlap YouTube thing that week and said the thing he hates most of all is dropping players. Couldn't have been worse timed, because I think if Newcastle go to Old Trafford with Nick Pope and goal, they win the game and finish 6th, and they're in Europe next season. And if you look at Man United's end of season, they go and beat Brighton and they win the cup final. I don't think they do either of those things if they don't beat Newcastle in that game. It was such a lift for them. So I'm a big Eddie Howe fan, Chris, to answer your question. And I think he has a massive future in the game and at the club, but I think he needs to learn fast from the mistakes of this season. And that's okay. Managers make mistakes, particularly when they're doing things for the first time like he was in the Champions League. But he needs to move on from the lads who got us to this level, and in order to move to the next level, he's going to have to show less loyalty to a few of them, in my view.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man, because I've said it on this show, on the night show, that because everybody was happy. Obviously, it sounds good when you say the manager says, "Well, it's tough to switch players or to sub anybody out because you're loyal to them because they're giving 100%." But I pointed out that that you can take that as a weakness as well. You can take that as a weakness because I think in one particular example, and maybe we go to the same example all the time, and and we don't find any other arguments, but Longstaff is playing example of that. It's he should have been subbed a long time, but then you get people that say, well, injury. Who else could he have played? So it's kind of I think next season will be a decisive season for Eddie. Um, there's going to be injuries, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as this season. I mean, I would hope not. So, and then with everybody coming back on, you're going to have Tonali full time. You hope to have Harvey Barnes full time, and hopefully some new signings. But that leads me to my next question to you, because the Mighty Win has been saying on the podcast that it's tough. Obviously, he's got the right to say this because he lives in Newcastle. I don't, but I'm asking you that you do as well. That it's tough to convince other players from all over the Premier League, it may be abroad, to come to live at Newcastle. And do you think that had something to do with the Tosin deal? Well, I mean, Tosin was living in London anyway, so maybe that was easier. But what do you think about that? Do you think that's real? What do you think about the whole situation?
It's real because previous managers and owners of the football club have said that. They've said that historically you'd have to pay a bit of a premium to get players to move to the northeast of England. There are some players who, Joe Willock's one, who's talked about how much he preferred living here compared to in London. And, players are different, but ultimately, I think Newcastle's just not a well-connected region. It's just not. Players, I think, particularly from outside of the UK, probably would prefer to be in London. But Newcastle convinced Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Joelinton, free takeover to come and play here, and Bruno chose here over Arsenal. So it's not impossible. They can do it. They managed to get Tonali to move from Milan to Newcastle. So it's definitely a consideration. But I think these days they're very much after a certain type of character and a certain type of player. So I think if they spoke to a player who said, you have to pay me more because I want to live in London or something, I think that would probably turn them off from the player that they're looking for non-party animal lads, I think, and they're scouting and stuff like that. It's maybe different from 10, 15 years ago where you just approached a player for the first time and he told you he didn't want to be in Newcastle. They probably know everything there is to know about a player's personality and his family these days before they make the approach. But I don't know, the Tosin deal, I've got no idea. I think stuff like not being in Europe probably plays a big role for players. I thought it was a huge blow not qualifying for Europe. So Chelsea still are a big club who are in Europe with other really good footballers playing for them. So it wasn't a surprise to me to lose out on a player to Chelsea, particularly when it's for a free transfer.
Yeah. Might win.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's very difficult to persuade somebody to come to Newcastle. The thing is, once they get here, they all love it because it's not what they imagined it was going to be, but it's just actually persuading them to come here in the first place. We've got so many Cockneys, particularly. You think of Warren, think of Rob Lee, who Malcolm McDonald, prime example, still lives here. Once they get here, as I say, I think I said on the show last night, you've got to get the place. You've got to get Newcastle, and once you get it, you're hooked. But actually, the initial, it's like, I don't know, when you're an ugly bugger like me trying to pull a bird, and you actually make, when you take her back to your jag, then it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
But to actually get them to come to this not so exotic paradise that we have here that's the difficult part of the equation.
Yeah. What can we expect from next season, man? I mean, kind of, you led us to we asking you how this season was, but I mean, next season we're gonna have players back. The injuries can't be as bad. Hopefully PSR gets fixed. We don't know yet, but what do you think? I mean, what would satisfy you to keep you happy and content throughout every show? How do we need to obviously win and everything, right? That way we keep everybody happy. But what would keep you satisfied next season? What can we expect?
Can I just give you a bit of a hint? Give a bit of a hint, Alec, because I maintain that if we'd had our squad last season with Tonali and Barnes fully fit, now, okay, we're going to get the odd injury, but I maintain that squad last season, if you include Tonali and Barnes, could have been challenging top 3. Do you agree with that, first of all?
It's a tough one because what a top 3 finish? What did Liverpool finish on 84? Did they finish on 84 points? So you're looking at an improvement of about 4 wins on 22-23, and bear in mind, what did we lose in 22-23? 4 games or something, 5 games. Going into last season, what they needed to do was draw less and turn those draws into wins. And I feel like with the goals that were scored, he did address that problem. I think we don't score enough against the bad teams. We've had some poor home results the previous season against like Bournemouth and Palace and a few others, and Leeds and Leicester. We didn't win any of those games. We picked up 4 points from those games. There should have been 12. And you look at this season, apart from kind of Luton and Everton and Forest, we're brilliant at home. We're really, really good. So they scored more goals, which took them closer to the teams at the top end of the pitch. But I think I can't just ignore the defensive collapse for large parts of last season.
Yeah, but the point I'm making, Alex, is without the injuries and stuff we had the best defense in the league the year before, and we still had that. Without Pope going out, Byrne getting injured, and Botman, of course, we had the best defense in the league the previous season. So we would have had the best defense in the league behind Tonali, Bruno, J7, behind Miggy and Murphy on the right, but then Isak, Gordon, and Bond. And if Wilson had been fit a bit more often, I just think that squad there would have been right up there.
I think you're right. I think the hard thing for me to get my head around is that teams at that level just can't play with such a small squad. They just can't. So next season, you've got more chance, I think, than last season, because you could say, okay, if all of those players stayed fit all season, but then with the demand of 6 Champions League games, 3 League Cup games, 3 FA Cup games, it's just not. And I get what you're saying, but if we didn't play in any of the other competitions, you'd say we'll have a good chance of at least getting. And that's what I said at the start of last season. I said, what's the aim for the season? I said, get closer to the top 3. That would be success for me. Not catching them because they've got more money. Every year you're playing these teams and they've got more money than you. They've got more money than the year before, and they already had more money then. So every year, Newcastle, currently, because of PSR, like Chris says, they're not only having to bridge last year's gap, they're having to bridge next year's gap without the resources to do that. So Eddie Howe is almost at like a huge disadvantage to all of these clubs apart from Aston Villa. In terms of your question, Chris, for next season, I think Newcastle just need to be competitive in the Champions League race. If they can get to April with a real chance of qualifying for the Champions League, that would be a good season. I think there's essentially 8 clubs for 4 positions now. And really there's 5 clubs for 1 position, because the top 3, like Wynne says, are so far away from the rest that you've got Newcastle, Man United, Chelsea, Spurs, and Villa all expect to finish 4th, and there's only 1 place. So I think it's going to be really hard to do it. Like you've both said, we're going to need luck with injuries to do that. We're going to need key players to stay fit. Bruno Guimaraes, one of the best things about him is he doesn't get injured. So if he can have another
50
season,
games and one suspended.
That's what you need from him next season. So for Newcastle, if you look at Newcastle's team now, they need a goalkeeper to stay fit. They need Joe Linton and Bruno to stay fit, and they need Isak to stay fit. If those 4 things happen, I think they'll finish at least 4th. But it's a big if, isn't it? It's a big if across the season. So I think we can really consolidate next season and push on. And we're going to have these rumours about what if Isak has another 20+ season, which he will. If he stays fit, he'll score 20 in the Premier League easily. The noise around him will grow even bigger. And to keep him season after next, I think we're going to need Champions League football, because he's not going to spend his career not playing at the highest level. Not saying he wants to leave. Don't think he'll leave this summer. But it's important that we get that 4th place, or at least give it a real good go to kind of keep these players invested in the project.
Right. And at some point, everybody wants to make money, Alex. And this is about money, man. And if we can't pay these guys what they think they can get, and essentially we can, but we got the money, we just can't spend it. This PSR thing is it's a big deal, man. So, but let's get to the questions from the fans. Antagonizing Jordy saying, Alex, what's your view on the claims we must sell before July to avoid breaking PSR? You believe that?
Probably. The fact that we couldn't make a signing in January because of PSR suggests that there just literally no. It's not money, as you guys know. There is the money to spend. It's like Excel spreadsheet wiggle room. So they probably do have to sell. It doesn't surprise me. That's something that I thought when they spent no money in January. I've got no idea on the figures or who they need to sell, but if they can get rid of someone in June, then I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Josh, Toon Army Philly says, for Alex, what are Mrs. and Mr. Shelby up to these days? I missed that bit with you and Charlotte so bad. Did you guys used to do something?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah. We just used to speculate about what John Joe would come home and tell his wife after a hard day's graft at football, because he used to come out with some crazy things. John Joe, I don't know if you remember, but he Newcastle beat Brighton 2-1, and he wrote an apology about his performance, and he just did mad things like that. But yeah, we don't know because they're in Turkey still. Though I hear he's having a good time. I miss John Joe, and I think the crucial thing, about PSR is Newcastle fans that's kind of entered our lives massively in the last 12 months. We really hear about it before then. But to sign Anthony Gordon, Eddie Howe had to get rid of John Joe Shelby and get rid of Chris Wood, and he wanted to do neither. He didn't want to lose. It wasn't like, oh, let's get rid of, let's find a club for these guys. He didn't want to lose Shelby, and he didn't want to lose Wood, and he had to bring in Gordon. So PSR has been really limiting what we've been able to do, like pretty much since, that was 2022, 2023. So it's been a real issue for the club for a long time, not just recently.
Yeah. Kenny says, does Alex think Palace will challenge the top 6 now? They got 4 players in England, man.
Yeah, it's a good question, Kenny. And you'd have to say, based on the form they've showed at the end of the season, I think there was a stat saying on the last day of the season, Palace away was the hardest game that any club had, because their form was so good, and they ended up winning 5-0. It's a real tough one, because I suppose it depends on if they can keep hold of their best players. If someone just say someone came in for Elise and Eze, they got no chance. I mean, if Wharton ends up having a decent Euros, if a Man City comes in for him at 60, 70 million, they'd lose him as well. So if they can keep their players and add to their squad, that'll be their aim next season, I think, like a top 7, top 6 finish.
Yeah. The purpose of this YouTube channel, of course, is growing the fan base worldwide. As people know, we got fans from all over the world saying their piece. And now you guys, the first thing you get on YouTube, if you put Newcastle and USA fans, just put that, you will see a video of the True Faith podcast, Charlotte interviewing American fans on the last preseason. So my question, it leads me to my question now. How do you feel about growing the fan base worldwide, especially in this particular worldwide in general, but obviously in the U.S. it's a big market. Darren Eales was here when we were in Nashville, and he made it clear that it is a market that we haven't even begin to tap into as far as Newcastle fan base is concerned. But of course, it brings up the minority of people that have an issue with the club having matches, abroad, and maybe losing, maybe growing like Man City, but in losing that the atmosphere that that Newcastle is so known for. But I think that is critical to grow the fan base because we make more money that way. I mean, Man United, I keep saying this, but Man United could have been relegated to the 6th division if they didn't have the fan base that they have. But what do you think about growing the fan base worldwide and all that stuff? We're going to Japan now. We went to Australia. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's necessary because of PSR. PSR makes it necessary for a club like Newcastle to bring in more revenue, commercial revenue in particular, and that the easiest way to do that, apart from Adidas and Seller and stuff, is through fan merchandise sales across the globe and fan interest across the globe. I agree with you, Chris. Like, if you want Newcastle to challenge at the top end of the Premier League, they are going to have to grow their international fan base. I understand some fans would say, well, I'm quite happy with Newcastle as they are. That's an individual choice for each person. But if your aim is for Newcastle to be one of the biggest teams in the world, they're going to have to replicate what Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, and anyone else I've missed have spent 10, 15, 20 years doing. It's a lot of catching up to do. It's a lot of catching up to do for the club.
Yeah.
And we had Peter Silverson on our podcast, who's the chief commercial officer of the club, start of the season, and he made the same point that the club have got, they're actively trying to do this. It is a key demand of the ownership and of the club to drive themselves commercially outside of the UK and grow the fan base. So whether people like it or not, it is here to stay. And I think the major issue comes in my understanding is access to St James's Park. It's really, really hard to get into St James's Park if you're not a season ticket holder.
Yeah.
Since the takeover, the club have only released 1,000 season tickets, and they could probably sell. People disagree about this, but I think the club could sell out 80,000 every game easily. If you look at the number of members, you look at the number of people who want to get in. They could and should build a much bigger stadium or extend St James's Park as much as they can. The issue comes when to attract an international fan base, you have to give them access. It's very difficult for the club to say, come and support Newcastle United, but you'll never get to see us play.
Yeah.
And that is where the balancing act lies. And some people would argue the club, because they're not particularly transparent on this, about travel deals and packages through certain partners, about how to get into St James's Park. I think international fans get some stick sometimes for things they haven't actually done. Accused of buying tickets at extortionate prices through towers. I think actually the ones I know haven't actually done that. They bought tickets in corporate areas, which anyone can do. Huge amount of money, don't get me wrong, but that's really it's a difficult one for the club. And I think Darren Eales maybe said it in Nashville. I'm not sure. When he was asked about it, what's the thing that the guys you've met with here have said most of all is most important to them, and they said ticket access to home and away fixtures.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is because for every, even whether it's international fan or not, every international fan or every new fan or whatever you want to label them, everyone who comes into an away end or a ground is keeping someone else out. That's just the reality of it, and it's for the club to try and find a balance to keep both happy and keep it fair. My view is they're not transparent enough about it, in my opinion, about a lot of things to do with ticketing. They'd say it's commercially sensitive. They'd say no other club is particularly transparent. I disagree. I think other clubs are more transparent about it. But what it's done is create a kind of culture of suspicion about how tickets are given out and allocated, and then people often blame the easiest people there are to blame, and often that's fallen on international fans who it's not fair because I haven't done anything wrong. And in a lot of cases, they are spending like ludicrous sums of money to come and watch Newcastle play, not just to the football club, but like transport, travel, the rest of it. So enthusiastics is really, you could probably do whole shows on it.
Whole show on that,
yeah, exactly. It's a really difficult one, but the problem will remain while the stadium is only 52,000 because it's just not big enough.
Yeah, now the thing, you rightly mentioned the home fans, people in Newcastle, fans in Newcastle want more tickets. They want to go to the stadium. Also, international fans, we say we want an allocation for international fans as well, which doesn't have to be a crazy amount either. I mean, if you actually do 50 tickets a month for for international fans, if they don't get used, because we told Darren Neals this in Nashville, if they don't get used in time or bought in time, then you give it to the local fans. But only 50 out of 55,000 people is not really a big of a deal. But you're still dealing with that. One of my, because we're going to get to the segment of the fiery questions that I would like you to answer that might put you on the spot. One of them is about St. James's Park, but let's get to the questions if you don't mind, and let's get started with those. You got to choose between going to, you got kids now, obviously, so going to your kids' graduation party, say they graduate later on down the line, or go to a Champions League final that Newcastle's playing it. Same day, same time. You have to choose.
I'd probably choose the kids because if Newcastle in the Champions League final, they're going to be in more than one. So I'd go next time.
I was going to say, yeah, if the option, because it's never going to happen.
No, man, we're hoping that it will. We're hoping that it will. It took City how long, man?
Well, look at Dortmund this year. Look at Dortmund. So
we're close. You can't beat that white beast, man. Nobody's gonna beat that team, man. It's impossible. It seems like. But all right, complete the phrase then. Newcastle will win the Premier League in what year?
2039.
Oh man. Ooh, Mighty Wayne's not gonna be with us, man. That's not fair. But but a lot of people say 2027. Surprisingly. Well, I mean, it would be the anniversary, right, from the last time we won it, which is crazy.
That's me sent to you. Come on.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, choose if you accept this deal. Newcastle wins the FA Cup final, haven't won a title since. Win the FA Cup final. However, Sunderland wins the Premier League in the same year. If you take that, do you take that deal, or you say hell no? We'll just be titleless for this time around.
No, I'm not that fussed about Sunderland.
Yes, my man.
I'd to see us lift silver. Remember the FA Cup final is awarded after the Premier League towards the last game of the season, and it would absolutely kill Sunderland fans to watch us win an FA Cup. They would care more about us winning the FA Cup than they would about the Premier League, so it would win both ways.
Yeah. Who's your football idol, man?
Football idol. You know what? I really loved Jonas Gutierrez when he was a player here. Wow. Not just because of his kind of health issues and the comeback and the role he played and keep us up, but he was a player who got loads of abuse from fans, Newcastle fans. Just if you're a Newcastle winger who can't particularly cross a ball, you're going to get a lot of stick from the East Stand and the Millburn Stand. And I just thought he never let his head down, and he was always trying to make things happen. His partnership with Enrique was brilliant. And when we went down in the Championship, he never once tried to leave or walk away, even though he played in the World Cup the year we got relegated for Argentina. I just really respected his approach to being a Newcastle player, and I was a big fan of his.
Yeah, so he would be your idol.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Yeah. This is an interesting question. What do you hate the most about what surrounds Newcastle? This could be the media. This could be how rattled the fans get sometimes over a loss. I mean, whatever. What do you hate the most?
Probably, we've touched on already. Probably the arguments about tickets and stuff like that. I was in Borussia Dortmund watching Newcastle play in the Champions League in the away end, and there were numerous arguments around me about tickets and the atmosphere and why that. And it's just like, and I think it was something, again, I think it's something the club haven't handled very well, and it's created this air of suspicion, and it's just not, people don't want to blame the club or have a go at the club because they're doing everything or most things right on the pitch. But I'm just sick of hearing about it. And it's easy for me to say because I've got a season ticket and loads of loyalty points, so I can go to any away game I want to. So maybe that's just kind of indicative of someone in my position who's sick of hearing about it because I don't want to have the conversation because I don't need to. But it's just so toxic. And people I know who are loyal Newcastle fans who get tickets through legitimate means, don't do anything wrong, getting abuse on social media. It's just, even the international fans getting abuse and stuff like that. And I see, some fans post photographs and stuff of the ground, and you get fellow Newcastle fans hammering them on social media. I just think, life's too short for this.
Yeah. Good points. Now this is an interesting one, man. In a heated one, if some people get heated about this. Current St. James's Park or a new St. James's Park in a new location?
It's got to be if current St. James's Park, you can't extend it. It's just not big enough. You're going to have to move to a new location. It's just not. If you want, again, everyone has their view, but in the PSR world, the stadium is not big enough. It's just not big enough. So we have to move. In the real world, we can extend it, and I think they will extend it, and that's great. But if it's St. James's Park now, to answer your question, now you've got to move because it's not big enough.
Yeah. What is the greatest moment as a fan that you have experienced throughout your whole time following the Toon?
Probably when we won at Brighton in the Championship, because my whole life, when it really, really mattered, Newcastle had never done it in the big games. To win the Premier League under Keegan or even Robson at times, to go, to get to a cup final and win, to stay up in the Premier League twice. That just when it really mattered, they'd failed, and went to Brighton, top 2, live on Sky. A long way to go on a Tuesday night to watch Newcastle play, other end of the country, and they played really, really well and won 2-1, and that was just a euphoric feeling. That's how the fans of the biggest clubs feel. You talked about Real Madrid before, Chris. Like, that's how their fans know in a big game when it really matters, they'll, even if they don't play well, they'll turn up and get a result, and that's a great feeling. That was a great feeling that night.
Yeah. Mighty Wayne, you got any questions for Alex?
Just on that very point, the thing is, we've always managed to win must-win games in the Championship. It's in the Premiership where we don't win must-win games, and never have done. If there's a key point in history where that seesaw has got to go one way or the other, we just fall short every time. In the Championship, we've done it on multiple occasions.
That's right.
But in the Premiership, and that's what we need to get, that winning mentality. And the only way you do that is by actually doing it and winning it. So it's that first, I've said a million times, that first trophy. Once we can get that first bit of silverware, then I think the floodgates open.
Yeah,
because players then get what it's like to have that winning feeling, and they want it again, and it just percolates through the whole squad and through the club, and it's just that first one that's so difficult to get.
Yeah. Last question for Alex. Gary Thomas says, Alex, due to our struggle with PSR, should the club focus more on and support the youth side to find local talent to build a squad, with the EPPP now supplying the big six? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, hi Gary. They're already, my understanding is they're already really, really pushing that. They're trying to absolutely transform the way that the youth sides operate in the recruitment process. Steve Harper's in charge of the academy as a whole, and there's an interview we did with journalist Mark Douglas that I'd really recommend digging out and having a read, because they talk about what the new owners are trying to do. Because you've seen with Lewis Miley this season and Elliot Anderson this season as well, two players that have really contributed in the first team. That is the way to get around PSR, both in terms of having youth players in the first team, so you don't have to spend money with them, and also potentially selling them on at a massive book profit to be able to kind of boost your PSR rating. So they definitely should do, but I'm pleased to say they are. I read anyway, they are really taking it very seriously, and know that it's essential for the reasons you've brought up, Gary.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's time, ladies and gents. So thank you so much, Alex, for coming on, man. You know, we're grateful to have you on, and of course, where can we find you, man? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so just I'm on social media on X at TFAlex1892, and then you can listen to me and others on the True Faith NUFC podcast. Just search it into any podcast platform or onto YouTube, True Faith NUFC, and there's plenty there to keep you busy if you like what we do.
That's right. When we cut off, stay right there for a second, Alex. Thank you so much out there to the folks. Please subscribe, hit the like button, become a member if you can. Help us support the channel. Alex Hurst, True Faith Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming on, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks.